So this is the tool now as it stands, FirstMileGeo. Anyone can go in, sign up, play with it, use it, so on and so forth. I'll just walk you through the basic tool and how it works and how we're using it, both in terms of data collection and then some of the visualization stuff that we've been adding. So this is when you log in. Effectively, if you've run a survey before, then you can just dig into that data. You'll see this is in Arabic. That's because, of course, the work we did in Syria was in Arabic. We have the full site presently in English and in Arabic. If we needed to translate it to any Romanic script, we can do that without too much of a problem. But you can also run surveys where the content of your survey is multiple languages. So this is effectively where you enter, hit new survey, get started. We basically wanted to make this super easy for local organizations to be able to do. So you have three options. Either you can create a survey from scratch here, or you can copy an existing survey. So let's assume that you run a survey, let's say in one country or one part of the country, and you want to take it and maybe localize it, adapt it, and use it, run it in parallel to in a separate country. So you can effectively have multiple countries or locations in which you're running similar variations or the same. You can go in and basically take the schema, the survey schema, and effectively steal it from one survey and run a new survey. You can also run a new survey in the same location, so that you have the same parameters of exactly where you're running the survey and ask different questions, or you can steal both. If someone else has used the system and established that they will allow all of this stuff to be public, then you can find their schema and steal theirs. So I think we'll need to be moving forward. We'll need to work on this a little bit in terms of findability, so that effectively, if you want to see has anyone run a survey in the place that I'm working and they've made it public, then I would be able to take that. If someone has run a survey in a similar topic area and I like their schema, I can take that. This is mind for now, and I'll show you where you can actually look at their data elsewhere. But this is the survey schema itself. The third option is just an expert template. We're in the process of building those out, so that's just standard templates that we might want to throw in for anyone to use. So I'll just run you through an example. I'll just give you the example of crime incidents, just because it's a lot more straightforward. But it could be anything. It could be a forum. It could be a survey. Whatever makes the most sense. So let's say crime in Nairobi, since we were talking about that. And again, Arabic or English. Continue. Next step is, do you want to collect data as points, areas, or lines? So in crime incidents, this is probably going to be points. So you might want to know the specific location. In participatory threat mapping, for example, what we've done is areas. So you could ask people, where do you feel safe, or where don't you feel safe, or where are the gangs operating, for example, that kind of thing. Lines might be movement patterns or pathways for people to move. Alternatively, if you have a slightly higher degree of sophistication and you have, let's say, neighborhood boundaries, or you have provincial boundaries, or whatever, then you can go in and say, I have map data, and hit upload of the shapefile. So additionally, if you've run a survey before and you want to be able to refer to those areas, so you don't always have to collect the same location data, then you can do that as well. So for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say points. This is tracking respondents. So again, this is relevant for certain use cases, irrelevant for others. In this case, let's assume in Syria, as I said, every month we run a 600-person survey. We want to be able to track the respondents themselves and the demographics associated with those respondents, as distinguished from the content of what they're providing us. So if we wanted to go back to them, ask different questions, run a different survey, we have two different, effectively, databases here. This is also useful for IDP registration or something along those lines. And the basic idea here is you create a simple schema, so their name or gender or whatever you want to do. If you've already run a survey before and you have a database of respondents, you can just pull on that database and use it again. Again, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say we're not interested. And now you just build your survey. So let's say type of incident, multiple choice, murder, Ray Basalt, and you'll see on the right-hand side it's generating a live preview of this, which is effectively your survey. So it generates a structured PDF of your survey with a unique identifier, date, and so on and so forth. Let's do one more, just to do a victim.
Can I see the type of fields?
Yeah.
Number, date, and time, multiple choice, one or more. So, in terms of the complexity of questions, are there any skip patterns or?
Yeah. So not yet. That's one of the things that we're in the process of building out. Partly because the complexity of skip questions. There's the complexity when you are creating the survey. By comparison, that's much easier than when you get to the visualization stage. So we want to walk you through the entire process of being able to do the data collection and then all of the visualizations and dashboards from it. And having conditional questions associated with that becomes a little bit difficult to do. So not there yet. That's definitely a priority.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Yeah.
The output, is that meant to be the paper output?
Sorry.
Only so because I look at the question and it doesn't have like no response categories and things like that. It looks more like a computer, a mobile kind of survey where those things are implied, but they're not on the paper. If you see what I mean? Or is there any capacity also for writing as well? Is it just?
So we have free text response options. Yes.
Right.
The challenge with free text response being obviously it becomes a lot more challenging when it comes to visualization. So what we did, to give you a concrete example of that, we wanted to know about the different militia groups operating in Syria. So, but we don't know the names of all of those groups, right? There are tons of them, right? So we had a free text answer option where someone could write in the name of a militia group. But then how do you visualize that, right? So what we did is built the ability to then consolidate. So if you have, I think we had, I don't know how many, like 70 or something, different militia groups in Syria, right, that came in free text answers. We wanted to be able to visualize that. So we built the ability to consolidate that into 5 or 6 or whatever, so you can see it on a map or you can see a dashboard to visualize that.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with surveys is it's very difficult. People always spell things differently, write things differently, so that's kind of a tricky.
Yeah, so
that's what the consolidation tool helps out with.
Yeah.
You get to see all the different misspellings all at once, and then take which ones you want to merge into one.
Right.
Right. Yeah, it's just sometimes when you're doing the analysis, a don't know is actually a relevant answer, and it didn't feel. Yeah.
So we don't automatically provide it because you could very easily just add
a multiple choice.
Don't know. Yeah.
It's not an auto.
It's not forced, in part because the sheer volume of ways in which people could use the system is not necessarily surveys, right?
Right.
So effectively what we've done is every time that somebody has what's available now is the general application that can be used for like whatever you want to run a survey or have a data collection form on, right? So microfinance institutions, for example, are interested in customer registration, right? So don't know is probably not something that they want to collect, right? But where we can get engaged is tailoring or customizing the system for particular use. So for example, UNOCHA has an independent agency called the Joint IDP Profiling Service, JIPS. And JIPS is, they run surveys on trying to identify basic variables about IDPs. They want a system like this, but they want to be able to sort of lock down the number of possible options so that they don't have chaos in the system, right? So we're tailoring something, I think, for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I ask a more basic question? Because I've never carried out a collective survey. How do you know who you're targeting? I mean, to send this out, you already have in whatever place, like people that you send it out to, and do you do it via text or how?
No, this assumes pen and paper, right? So this is the process. This is the equivalent at this point of going into Word and then going into an Excel, typing out something in Word, hitting print, and then creating an Excel spreadsheet. And then when you have people that collect the data, you have multiple spreadsheets.
So you have already people in all the places that collect the data?
The software assumes that you do. So we don't provide the services around data collection. We're just creating the software that allows you to do it. But yes, so if, for example, you had field teams that were collecting data in whatever country, this would be a tool that would allow you to do that. So anyway, I'll just hit next to move on to the next stuff. So this is where effectively you create your map. This is relevant if you want to literally collect the data onto the map. So crime incidents, for example, what we did with police is they would have a map and they would have the data collection form. And so we allow you to create, let's say, we allow you to create an atlas or a wall map of your area. So like this, each grid square, create a series of grid squares for the area. You can flip it to Bing if you prefer. Okay, next. Check everything to make sure that it's good to go before you publish. Hit publish. And now you have what we refer to as a collection toolkit. This is effectively everything you need to go out and collect data. So you have the survey, and we've created it in two different formats, like this, or like this, depending upon what makes the most sense for your workflow. You have a map, and then you also have an instruction guideline. So effectively, one of the first things that we always have to end up doing whenever we go to the field to collect data is training people on the instruments. So it comes with effectively a how-to. Here's what your survey looks like. Here's what a unique identifier is, why that's important. Here's how you fill out a multiple choice question. Here's what your map looks like, grid squares, what a point of interest is. Make sure you have enough of these things printed. Here's how you collect data and so forth. So it's, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. So your survey's printed. Say you could print out the hard copies, etc., and then your field teams utilize them, and then you have someone who does the data entry back into the system. I guess two questions, and sorry if I'm really jumping ahead. And this may be what the CTO is going to do in terms of next generation, but are you looking to be able to deploy the survey via mobile so that someone could fill out the survey on mobile? I would say via hyperlink, which could be connected to mobile too. And the second thing would be is if someone can fill it out via mobile, with mobile there would be two options. One, you have a survey collector where they go around and can do multiple forms on mobile, or using some type of SMS distributor, you could send it to multiple people.
So the short answer is yes, that's exactly where we're going. So as I said before, we want to be as agnostic as we can reasonably achieve, such that paper is how a lot of people already collect data, and so we want to start there and structure the information, so it generates a CSV that's pre-formatted and all that. The other two areas that we're looking at in the nearer term are SMS and mobile data collection. And rather than focusing first on creating a new mobile data collection app, right, so there are about 36 of those, is focusing first on an API that allows you to use whatever format or a third-party application to be able to do it. So SMS and mobile, and then we'll go from there. You can also ingest, if you have other data, depending upon the file formats. You can also, we've been working on ingesting like legacy data. So if you already have data of some sort, then you'd be able to ingest it.
Have you run into security issues in Syria with, I used to work do this type of stuff. We refer to it in Syria as atmospherics. That's very Department of Defense atmospheric-based survey structure in terms of where you're collecting data and the frequency with you're collecting it. In terms of paper and pen, do you run into security?
No, actually, we quite the opposite. So we found we were originally going to go in the direction of mobile, and the field teams asked us, please don't do that. The reason why they asked us not to do that, a couple of reasons. Number one is because in government-controlled Aleppo, the way in which people actually collect data is more conversational, right? Especially because we have panel data, right? So because it's conversational, they're able to sort of fold up the piece of paper, literally put it in the back pocket, right? So I went to the border, brought them over, trained them up for a week, and we went through a process of trying to figure out what is the best way in which you can collect the data. And what we found was, for the guys in government-controlled Aleppo, because it was conversational, having something in the back pocket that they could sort of unfold and fill out after they go have a conversation was safer for them. They additionally, because the mobile data collection, the available mobile data collection tools, of which at least I'm aware, force a certain level of structure on the way in which you collect the data. And when you're doing something that's a bit more conversational, you actually need more flexibility. In opposition-held areas, it's a little bit different because there is a lot more. There are a lot of internet cafes. It's a more permissive environment. But they too had a preference. It sort of varied by the location. They had a preference for dropping. They had enough internet connectivity that they preferred dropping pens and things online directly rather than using paper maps, as opposed to the guys in the opposition areas. That's the sort of short answer.
Quick question as well. Sorry. With this tool, using GIS as a backbone through the tool, I would think that the element that I didn't see, and it may well be able to be built in as a module, is sample design. It's like telling people where you go to your sampling points to do your interviews. Selecting the sample using GIS to, and any kind of census information or any kind of information you have could be a layer in this where, as well as getting your questionnaire, it tells you where you need to go to ask your questions. Is that sort of an element that will be built in?
That's not something that we've completely understood, and I think you're right about that. That's not something that we've worked through at all.
It's such a cool addition. It will be so helpful because also it really then helps you describe the sample when you're analysing the data.
Sure.
That you actually then have some kind of like process for deciding what your sample would look like and designing your approach to get that. And it could be very randomised or it could be very, very it could be either way. It's just such a cool thing with GIS when you have all that other information as well. The other thing is you're creating a lot of geographical information in doing the work that also could then be used to inform sample design for future projects. I use GIS in China actually, where national statistics were kind of variable and certainly didn't catch migrant populations in any shape or form. This is a way that you can actually capture those kinds of transient populations very well. It's not kind of survey them as well as the resident population. So it's a really cool way.
I think so. I completely agree with you. I think my initial reaction would be that one of the complexities that would emerge is that effectively, I think what you'd be talking about is if you have a distributed team, being able to isolate, okay, this guy goes in this location, this guy goes in this location, right? You're not just building a sampling frame, you're also building a coordination function within the tool. And having sufficient flexibility where, let's say, actually this guy now needs to go over here, right? There's a lot of workflow in being able to handle that level of management. Completely agree that having such a tool would be very useful.
But that's what researchers do on the ground.
Do on the ground anyway.
So they do on the ground anyway. So you would just be really assisting them with that, and adding a whole new layer of kind of like insight to that process because you're actually getting actual information rather than relying on official sources which will probably be completely inaccurate. It's really cool.
Okay, so anyway, I'll just show you a couple of additional things. I'm gonna jump ahead and show, sort of operate under the assumption that you've now collected some level of data and just give you a feel for what it looks like. So effectively, when you upload the data, you'll see that the data comes in. Let me actually give you a different example with more data in it. This is some of the data from Syria, for example. We have 4 different reporting periods that have come in each month. Let's assume that you have a distributed team and you need to be able to consolidate your spreadsheets, which sometimes can be a pain. By having each user upload the data in a distributed function, you can effectively hit these and hit consolidate. So it gives you the ability to do some of the stuff that otherwise would be kind of messy work, and automate, not automate, but assist with some of that process. All of the data, once uploaded, can also be downloaded as CSV, Excel, GeoJSON at report level or in aggregate. So it's very easy to sort of export if you want to use it for some other more sophisticated application or something more particular you might have in mind. Once the data comes in, I'll give you an example. This is fake data crime San Pedro Sula. So the USAID has asked us, they have a challenge in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. Homicide rates in San Pedro Sula, Honduras are in excess of, per capita in excess, about 5 times the excess of homicide rates in Baghdad in the heart of the conflict. But if you ask the mayor, if you ask the police where they're happening, the answer you get is anecdotal. So USAID, World Bank, and even the Department of Defense and others are looking at ways in which they can reduce patterns of violence within the city, but nobody has the ability to benchmark any of their activities. And so the Office of Transition Initiatives at USAID is looking at having us effectively provide to the, if you're the chief of police, the mayor, or USAID, if Monday morning at 9 a.m. you want a 2-pager that tells you what's happening within the city, we want to be able to provide that to you easily. So there are effectively several different layers here. There's the analyst layer. And so this is what we refer to as the map explorer. This is basically, you have on your left-hand side, these are all of the questions that you put on your form. So type of incident, age of victim, weapon used, for example. And you can filter the data. So you might be looking at murder, rape, theft, etc. Or you can take a look at a heat map of your data. I'm going to close this for a second. Take a look at a heat map of your data, for example. Let's assume that what you're interested in is you want to see a heat map of, I don't know, where rapes are occurring, right? See, again, this is not real data, as you might imagine. High concentration of rapes. You can then drill in if you want and say, for example, I want to see the particular locations where this seems to be occurring, and you can drill down using Bing and sort of see, aha, I see this is happening in a public park, and look at each one of the individual entries as you wish. Additionally, we drill, so you can enter full screen mode if you wish. You can zoom back out. And let's assume that you want to look at, for example, all of the different types of crime. So rather than just this, you can color code the pins, type of incident, and you'll see it's color coded the pins, and it generates a basic key of all of your answers.
So this would assume that your police officers and that each one fills down whenever there's a crime, and then into the system, and then it's aggregated.
Yeah, so this assumes that you now have the data in the system, and this is your sort of, if you will, analytical portal, right? But what I'll show you in a second is, I think, in this workflow, there are the people that are the analysts, and then there are people that really aren't going to go in and play with your tool, right? They just want the 2-pager. Right. And so I'll show you in a second how we're addressing that. But this assumes that you're an analyst and you want to go in and play with the data. I'll show you a slightly different example. This is real data from Syria. Apologize, it's in Arabic, but effectively, I might as well. Why don't I go ahead and one of the tools that, let's assume in this case in Syria, one of the things that we've done is we collected all the data in Arabic, but we want to be able to play with it and view it in English. So effectively, we've built a translations tab, which effectively says, okay, let's say we did it in Arabic, we want to see it in German. Create new translation, and you have each one of your questions. So this is a question and the multiple choice answers, and you can translate all of it here. Once you do that once, then you can now view all of your data in that new language. Because it's already in the system, it's already coded on the back end. The sole exception to this is free text. So obviously if someone has written in a full free text answer, then you won't be able to see it in that translated language. Right? So to give you an example here of English, we translated this survey in English. Now we want to see it preview, and we want to be able to see the Map Explorer where we're looking at the data in English. These are all the bakeries.
These are really the bakeries in...
Yes.
There's a lot of them. Incredible.
So is the bakery functional, for example, or what's the price of bread, or how would you describe the traffic, really busy, somewhat busy, and so forth. Effectively, we can, as you see here, this is all of the different questions, and we can color code the pins based upon those questions. So, for example, how would you describe the bakeries? Busy, not very busy, so forth, and generates a key. Now you'll see it's generating this. This is 8 reports. That's because we did it over 4 months, 2 weeks each. We can, if we prefer, we can just drill down to 1 reporting period, or isolate whatever we want. I'll show you a different example, and this is fairly useful in describing how we can get value of time change over time. So this is the price of bread. You'll see in aggregate 175 or 0. 175 it's Syrian pounds, 0 being obviously 0. If we want to see how this has changed over time, one of the things that's been widely reported in the news about Syria is that the price of bread has been fluctuating quite significantly, and that bread is used by the regime to be able to sort of force certain control over communities. If we want to see this play out, hit play, and you'll see, I'm going to hit pause for a second, you'll see the first reporting period. The price of bread here is very, very, very high. If we look at it, we click on an individual point, we'll see that it's about 150 Syrian pounds. It's very high. This corresponds exactly with the territory controlled by the Syrian government. So this is Syrian-controlled Aleppo. This is opposition-controlled Aleppo. It's much, much, much cheaper. This is during their initial reporting period. Hit play and see how it plays out, and you'll see a mass reversal. It's now significantly higher in opposition-controlled area versus government-controlled areas.
Like at the end of the last survey you did? Or?
Right. So you'll see it's flipping through the dates here. And so you can see time series of the data as it flips through the dates on each reporting period.
Does that sudden reversal correspond to any event?
Yes. So it corresponds with this road right here is the road between Damascus and Aleppo, and it was contested during the early periods, and it is the only major supply route for the government into Aleppo. It was contested at the beginning. The government was unable to consolidate control, and after they consolidated control, you'll see that the bread prices went really low to 15. That's because they started providing bread subsidies. Anyway, from the perspective of what this allows you to do, let's assume that you looked at this picture and you say, this is very interesting, I want to throw it into a report. You can clip the image, or you can clip a video. So if you want to see that time series lapse video that we just saw, you can hit MP4 video, and it'll email you a video of the time series of what we just saw. Additionally, you can filter, you can look at, as you're looking at the map, you can look at non-map visualizations of what you're looking at. So, for example, if you want to see the price of bread, let me actually go to all reporting periods. Price of bread. The average is 42, median 75, standard deviation of 38.87. But then you can look at this as a pie chart if you want, for example, or average across time or median across time. So again, this window is sort of your explorer. This doesn't give you answers straight away. This is for the analyst. But going back to the idea of the police chief who every Monday morning, or whoever, every Monday morning who wants to report 9 a.m., we built this function, which is a dashboard. And it's basically your data in one place in which you can configure what variables you want to look at and what kind of visuals you want to associate with those variables. So the way it works is these are each one of the questions, and all of the different visualization options you have to see that question. So you can go down and configure it however you want, hit save when you're ready, and it generates this one pager. It's downloadable as a PDF or a PNG. And then if I want, again, email distributions, weekly, Monday morning, 9 a.m., to be very American about it, john@johnsmith.com. Create new distribution. And every Monday morning, John Smith, hopefully not a real guy, will receive an email from the system with that data. You additionally can have as many dashboards as you want. So often when you run surveys, you have lots of different people that are interested in various bits of the data. They can go in and create their own dashboards and their own reporting cycles. So net, what one could have is, for example, a donor, two different analysts within an organization, all not going in and playing with the system. They're all able to receive Monday morning, 9 a.m. They just get the dashboard. So it gives you the ability to create a more seamless reporting cycle to distributed groups.
And you can also change the data set of the dashboard. So if you only want to see data prior to November that were murders in St. Petersburg, that could be the data that makes up your dashboard as well. We allow you the same filter interface that we showed you on the map for dashboards as well.
It's really cool. I'm sorry, I don't want to become that really annoying person who always asks. No, but just one question. One question for me as an analyst potentially is just to have a piece on the dashboard or on the report that gives you kind of what it is you're looking at, like how many people were interviewed, that kind of stuff, because that contextualizes all the information. Otherwise, I need that context. Significant.
So on the map side of things, we do have a small little piece of text that says, the filters that you have chosen match 1,700 of 2,500 entries. We haven't implemented that on the dashboard side of things, but that could be done, because when you pick your data filters for a dashboard, I would be able to tell you, how many different respondents make up this batch.
Yeah,
so
I'd want to say, this number of people were interviewed, and the other thing, the other quick question, and I promise I've shut up, is it's about verification. It's like how the responses are kind of like verified. Like several people may be talking about the same incident but locate it slightly differently. So is there a way of sort of triangulating on that?
Totally. We've had a lot of discussions about building some sort of reviewing system where a specified person in your group can go in and see everything that comes into the system on a daily basis and say, this is something looks odd about this or suspect, and approve it or deny it. So there's been a lot of talk about that. It's obviously a big project, but useful for certain scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
I'm reading stuff at the moment about theories of competitive control.
Yeah.
And I see some Pedro Sulos in there, and I'm wondering if that's one of the context of your work or some of the motivation behind it, the Dave McCullough's stuff. I'm interested.
Dave Cook-Collins?
Yeah.
So Dave is, somewhat. Dave's on our board, and he was the CEO of Keras, where we're spinning out. So Dave is part of our team.
Okay, interesting.
So yes, in some way.
Okay. So on these maps, the ability to see the other factors that one might be interested in exploring theories of competitive control, so that that was occupied territory, and that was who was occupying which territory at what point, and what happened on the road, and all of that sort of thing. But in the case of like San Pedro Sula or Kingston or one of these places, like who's where?
Yes.
Those kinds of things. Can you get a layer of that?
Yeah.
That's unrelated to a survey that you've done with this. Can you feed that layer in so that you can see?
Yes. So that's what that's actually one of the things that we're working on now. Is I would treat that almost like two different surveys. Right. So one survey, I think I understand what you're saying. I'm just going to repeat it back, make sure I'm clear. What are the different groups, say gangs or whatever, that are within what neighborhoods? And then
or even other factors, for instance, like food insecurity, or water,
or whatever it is. Yeah. So what we're working on is the ability to compare, if you will, two surveys, so two layers.
Right.
If you want to do lots of different layers, then I think you need a GIS person, because of the complexity increases by orders of magnitude as you add additional layers onto it. And so what we're trying to do is make it easy for the non-GIS person to get this kind of data out of it. So short answer is, if you're interested in, for example, a series of variables about, let's say, neighborhood by neighborhood of Kingston, you wanted to know what groups were operating there and what are the socioeconomic conditions, that I would treat that as one layer. And then if you then wanted to run a survey and ask people about where do they feel safe, right? Then yes, you can do that. But if you want to, add in additional layers,
if you want to do deeper and deeper analysis of the intermix of causal effects, you would have to.
Yeah, I mean there are limits to what we can do without making it too complex to use. So that's the dashboard feature. The last thing I'll show you, then I shall leave you alone. Is the analysis feature. So one of the things that we find is really important is being able to weight your variables. So if you run a survey, you want to be able to weight the, say, multiple choice answers, or alternatively, if you want to create an index. So what is a health index, or a resilience index, or something? This is one of the things that we've been focusing on, that we've used in Aleppo. And effectively, the way that it works is, and I apologize, this is in Arabic, but these are all of your questions that you've asked. So let's say you've asked a multiple choice question, add, and these are the possible responses to your multiple choice question. I'm going to do this totally at random, but let's assume that you assign a weighted.
I think English is available for this.
So how would you describe the security in your neighborhood? Very dangerous, unsafe, moderate, secure, very secure, right? I'm going to do this totally at random, but let's say that we want to assign values to these. The map will dynamically respond to the weighted variables. And the way that it works is you've weighted each of the possible responses, and we have the total number of responses that have come in. So it creates effectively an index for you.
Yeah. So you can investigate any of the different areas, and it shows you the math, so you can double check it yourself.
Additionally, if you have multiple questions that you want to do this with, you can do that. Well, it doesn't change much. You can create a composite index. So effectively what this means is, if you want to know, just making this up, if you want to know what is the least safe neighborhood but in Nairobi, but carjacking is very different than Westgate, right? Weighting your variables based upon what you think is the most appropriate weighting of those variables, you would then be able to look at one picture that says this is the least safe, this is the most safe. Further, where we're moving with this is, once you have that picture, if you have data coming in, creating threshold alerts. So something happens, and all of a sudden, the least safe neighborhood is no longer, Eastleigh or something like that. It's probably not Eastleigh, but whatever. It's no longer Eastleigh. Then you'll get an email, and it'll say, aha, something's changed, maybe you should take a look at this, right? This is particularly useful if you want to be able to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening within a community without always requiring people to go in and play with variables and crunch the data. So that's sort of where we are. We're going to be, working on some additional analysis features that are, kind of simplified analytical capabilities beyond that. And there are other things that you can do that I won't go into too much now. Just on the question, for example, if you run a survey often, you want to then be able to add a bunch of other people into it and collaborate around the analysis. Collaboration, super easy. Just add in someone's email address here. And we have a basic account hierarchy. Administrator, collector, observer. Administrator, see everything, edit everything. Collector, guy on the ground who's actually collecting the data, can only see and edit their own data. So they're not going in and screwing up other people's data. It's also helpful for high threat environments like in Syria. If someone hacks into one of our guys in Syria's account, he won't know about the existence of others. And then an observer, this is sort of the analyst or donor or somebody who wants to be able to play with the Map Explorer or dashboards, but you don't want them screwing with your underlying data. So just add them. Say we want John Smith as a collaborator. Add collaborator. He's added, and he'll receive an email that says, If he already has an account with us, it will just appear when he logs in. If he doesn't, he'll receive an email saying he's been added. And then you can also change around the questions if you want. All of this is configurable, so if you run a survey and you want to edit your questions or change them around, then you can do that. When you try to save, you'll say save new question order, and it'll warn you, sure you actually want to do that, because it's going to screw up your entire schema. But that's useful if you want to run a pilot and you don't want to recreate the entire thing when you actually run the proper survey. And then if you want to make your data public, publish it, for example, publish your maps and dashboards, then you can have public access. Let's say it generates a unique URL or the code where you can embed this map explorer onto your website. Anyway, sorry, there's a bit long, but that's sort of what we're up to. As I said, we just spun out as a new company now. Anybody who wants to go on, play with it, use it for free, they can do that. And just for us, the business model presently is we have this free version, and then we do tailoring and customization on particular projects. So everything from language to locking down features so it's easier to use, customizing visualizations, that kind of stuff.